Does it work? Yes, now it works. Hello and welcome. So let's talk a bit about how to run a free and open source software company. First of all, why to run a company, right? Why should you offer some goods and services in exchange for money? Well, because money is nice. We all love sats and we want to have more sats. And the best way to get more sats is to be useful for others, right? That's how you convince them to hand over that magic internet money hoard of treasure. So being useful, that's what running a company is all about. And why do we want to do it in software, in cyberspace? Because meat space is hard, right? If you actually have to produce some physical good, you're limited to time and space in that one location, right? You need to have people specifically there, you need to get raw materials specifically there, and then you need to move the finished product to the customers specifically there, right? Meat space is difficult, it doesn't really scale. So cyberspace is cool because we can deploy something to billions of users with the click of a button, right? Because information longs to be free and information can be transferred at the speed of light. So this means we can be useful at scale, satisfying thousands or billions of people by providing services in cyberspace, software services. So why should they be free and open source? Right? Free, not as in free beer, but in free freedom. Right? We want the end user to not be a slave. Right? The end user is a sovereign individual, just like you and me, and we should treasure and respect that, and build tools that do not undermine his humanity, but instead is a foundation for it. Right? If people have strong foundations to stand on, and they are secure and protected, then their individuality can flourish, their creativity can. So we want to treasure and respect the humanity of the end user. And that's why the software has to be free, in the sense that the end user sees exactly the software that he is running, right? That he can control and verify the computation that is happening on his own machine, right? The hardware, the computer. So that the user has access to the code is essential for him to ensure that he is not being exploited. And then simultaneously, if the software is not working for whatever reason, then the end user has the freedom to change it, to adapt the piece of software to satisfy his end, to make it more useful for himself. And not just then to use that new piece of software that changed and modified our code by himself, but also the freedom to publish it to other people. Right? Free software is about the freedom to share information and to use it, disperse it wildly so that it can be used by countless people. Right? And that the end result of the free software development process is high quality code. Right? Something that's useful and something that's robust, something that actually works without bugs and can be used by thousands of people at scale. And so free software builds, or the free software process builds high-quality pieces of software that are based on ethical foundations of protecting and treasuring the humanity of the end user. And so putting this all together, right, we want to earn more money, right? We want to have more sats. And we do that by being useful for other people, providing goods and services. And we can do that at scale if we do it in cyberspace. And if we act in cyberspace ethically based on freedom principles, then we will have a high-quality piece of code that can be distributed to a bunch of people. Right? But then still, how do we get paid? How do we actually now receive the sats for putting all the work into writing this piece of software? Right? First, what do we not do? Right? Have access right, paid access right to the software itself. Right? You can only access the piece of software, download it, run it on your own computer if you pay. Right? That is almost a proprietary model. Right? Now we are limiting the amount of people who could potentially benefit from that service. Right? Only those who pay. And that's a downside. Now the software is not as widely dispersed as it could have been. So most free software projects are completely free to download, precisely because of that reason. We simply reach more people. Right? And so the access right to the code itself, charging for it, is inherently something that will limit the usefulness and the reach of your product. So instead, we can make the download free, right? The enjoyment of running the code locally as it should be, as it's just information that can be copied for free. Still, we want to get paid. Right? So there are then places where we have to find scarcity, right? In the sense of a limit of resources that can be allocated to a large amount of needs. Right? We have many users who want something, but a very limited amount of resources to provide it for everyone. Here is where resource allocation comes in, where we need to find out whom do we give the resources. And a good reason here, or a good deciding factor, is whoever pays you. Right? That's a really good way to allocate scarce resources. Whoever pays the most, he should get access to those resources. Right? So that can be, for example, compute power. Clear example, artificial intelligence requires a lot of compute. It's very useful, so people can pay in order to get access to the compute power, and the service provider can add a profit margin and stack sats this way. So giving access to scarce resources like compute power, one good way of getting paid. Access to an API, for example, as well, like a group chat, right? Something that cannot just be manifested on a single user's computer, something that requires the collaboration and networking of many different computers. Right? This is something, a value add that cannot easily be replicated by just a single user. This requires a coordination, and that service is, again, scarce and can be charged for. Right? So all types of server API calls, basically. But ultimately, for all of these services that we can do in cyberspace, the one key problem was in the past that it was very difficult to transfer money from the end user to the service provider, right? Because we literally did not have money in cyberspace. With credit cards, maybe, but a lot of chargeback risks and fraud. So it was never very easy and intuitive, especially for small amounts. But thankfully, we have free money in cyberspace now. We have Bitcoin. And this is a very simple mechanism to transfer value from one computer to another, basically. And with this, we can make it just easy for the end user to pay for a service. Right? It can be automated like any other piece of software, so that value is simply transferred from the end user to the service provider with extremely low friction. The marginal cost for this transaction in terms of mental compute load can be extremely low with good software development and engineering, where we have user interfaces that just make it work by default in the background. This is a key part missing, because users are happy to pay for a service. They just don't like spending a lot of time on finalizing that transaction. But we can reduce the cost of a transaction with Bitcoin substantially, especially over the Lightning Network. So whenever the end software that you're publishing for your customers, whenever that has an integrated Bitcoin wallet, where the software itself manages the money of the end user, then you can write in the software that an automated payment is happening to the service provider. And this actually works. This works for Wasabi Wallet, right, where we have an API service that is where the access has to be paid for. But because the end user is a Bitcoin wallet, we make it extremely easy in the UX to transfer the money from the end user to the service provider and reclaim the service. And the same could be, for example, in Nostr. We see this as well, where we have more and more integration of software products with the money protocol itself, so that with the click of a button or just automatically in the background, money can be transferred from the user to anyone else, including the service provider. Right? And now, whenever the user makes already a payment, there is the opportunity to simply add another payment as a service provision fee. Right? So in Nostr, for example, as Blitz, where multiple people end up getting paid whenever the user clicks a single button. Same with podcasting 2.0, where the content is still released free for everyone, but for every minute that you're listening, the end user has an automated software that simply sends money every minute to the creator of that podcast, who can choose to split it up among the content creator, the editor, the researcher, the publisher. All of these different people in the provision chain of this valuable good can now get paid automatically at really low friction. And we see that people do it, right? People just use Wasabi and are happy for the quality of the product that it is, so that they don't mind the small 0.3% fee. with podcasting 2.0, people love the content that is being provided, an extremely valuable good that people love. So they're willing and happy to send sats to the creator of this podcast, and don't mind that it's being split up with, for example, the podcasting application developer, right? And now same with Nostr, where we have a common way of also for paying for a storage. Right? Nostr relays store a lot of data. Again, a scarce service, you only have so many gigabytes on your disk. And if you store the data from one user, you don't have room to store the data of another user. And this is also, again, managed with a price, with money. So I guess the summary of this talk is that we've always been useful, we've always helped each other, we've always run businesses, and we've always gotten paid for it because people really value those goods and are happy to pay for them. We are continuously building technology that makes it easier and cheaper and more intuitive to send money to other people. And that means that now all the entrepreneurs have the opportunity to integrate this cyberspace money stack to build products and services where the payment from the end user to the merchant, to the service provider, is fully automated and simply works. And I think that is the kicker that is really needed to ensure that, for example, free software development has sustained funding. It, again, has worked very well for us at Wasabi, and I think it's something that can be replicated for a lot of people. So thank you very much for listening so far, and if you have any questions, please reach out.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.